Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
Are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View.
All right, how y'all doing out there tonight? Yes, you know I miss you when we're not talking. Now, I know I'm an hour later than usual tonight, but I'm still here for you guys. And, of course, that's a stack of show prep. Now, I forget to do this all the time at the end of the show. So I'm going to do it at the beginning of the show. For those of you who want to interact with me when I'm not hanging out on the air with you, you can find me on Twitter at Jessie's POV. You can find me on Facebook, Jessie's POV. And you can also shoot me an email here at the station, Jessie's POV at KLRNRadio.com. All right. Now that I got that out of the way, because I never remember to do it. By the time I get to the end of the show, I'm sitting here staring at the clock going, oh great, oh no, okay, what's next? So I tend to be just a little bit off track. So I'm going to start doing that at the top of the show. And just as a reminder, everybody, get out your phone or get a pen and piece of paper or however you take notes. On Saturday, December 17th, we are going to have a Star Wars versus Star Trek special live here on KLRN Radio. And we will have an open phone line that day. And we will be taking callers. So you are going to, our audience will be able to participate in the show. Because it'll be the day after Rogue One comes out. Come on, this is going to be cool, folks. Our own Dr. Judy L. Moore will be the host. All right. Now, on to what you come to me for. The news. And I have a bunch. There is a lot going on in the world that I have not seen anywhere. Absolutely nowhere. You know me, I don't sit here and just try and figure out what stories I want to cover. I sit and sift through. I take several hours to put together the show. I really do. Sometimes even when I'm not at home, I will start to peruse articles. So I've got stuff from Turkey. I've, of course, got an Inherent Resolve update, aka Mosul and Raqqa. I have something from the State Department. I even have something from Germany. That's not normal, but I've got one. Of course, I've got something on the Cuban funeral. I have a whole host of things that are going on. I've got South Korea, I've got North Korea, they've all been in the news. As is our usual modus operandi around here, we are going to start off with the update on Inherent Resolve. And I'm calling it Inherent Resolve because that is its true operational name, and because this update, especially the press briefing, which wasn't conducted, by the way, as you'll hear when you listen to it, by an American. Nope, it was conducted by Major General Rupert Jones, who is the Deputy Commander, Strategic and Support Combined Joint Task Force for Operation Inherent Resolve. That's a mouthful. And he is British Army. I'm going to do just a real short bio on him. He was commissioned into Devonshire and Dorset Regiment in 1991. Served his early career in Germany and Northern Ireland and Bosnia. Following company command, he served as Chief of Staff for the 12th Mechanized Brigade, deploying to Iraq in 2005. He commanded 4 rifles from 2008 to 2010. And he saw this battalion sustaining an 11-month commitment to Afghanistan. Most recently, he served as the Assistant Chief of Staff Operations and Chief of Staff to the Standing Joint Commander UK in the Army, headquarters from 2014 to 2016. He is currently deployed as the CJTF Deputy Commander on Operation Inherent Resolve. Now, I'm going to warn you, this is a long. We are saying 6 minutes and 25-second audio clip on Inherent Resolve. I may actually stop it and discuss some of what he says, but I do think it is important for you to hear it, or I wouldn't play it. All right.
Thanks, Jeff, and good morning, everyone in Washington. Very good to be with you today. What I'm going to do is start with Syria, move on to Iraq, and then I'll finish with some context on the non-US coalition contributions to the war against Daesh. In Syria, the Syrian Democratic Forces, having recaptured well over 700 square kilometres of terrain from Daesh, and now continue planning the next phase of isolation of Raqqa. They're now less than 30 kilometres from the city, and have encountered light to moderate resistance as they continue clearing villages along the axis of advance. Of note, as they advance, they continue to find Syrian Arab volunteers who are either from Raqqa or areas that have been recently liberated. As they liberate cities and villages, they set up local councils to re-establish governance and maintain security. This is the same formula the SDF successfully used to liberate and re-establish governance in Manbij, Hasaka and other areas. As the SDF continue their isolation effort, they have been taking a deliberate approach, back-clearing the areas they control to reduce the ability of Daesh to re-infiltrate or attack using sleeper cells. The coalition continues supporting their operations with airstrikes, having delivered more than 600 munitions onto enemy targets. These strikes have destroyed vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices, fighting positions, vehicles, and eliminated Daesh tactical units, the fighters they use to intimidate and maintain control over the population. The SDF continues to prove that they are quite capable of defeating Daesh wherever they encounter them on the battlefield. In Iraq, the Iraqi security forces continue to make deliberate progress in their advance on Mosul. The CTS has continued clearing in the east to the city, despite tough resistance from Daesh elements. Although they have lost significant amounts of territory in eastern Mosul, Daesh has used snipers and indirect fire, mortars and rockets in an effort to terrorise civilians in areas that have been ripped away from their control. They've also used suicide vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices to attack the advancing Iraqi security forces. In response, at the request of the government of Iraq, the coalition has disabled 4 of the 5 bridges connecting east and west Mosul and increased terrain denial missions. This is the crating of roads in areas where the ISF are seeking to manoeuvre. The intent of these operations is to reduce the effectiveness of the vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices. This combination of the 2 tactics seems to be reducing the number of VBIDs the enemy has been able to use. We expect tough fighting to continue in the weeks ahead. As the Iraqi security forces on other axes converge on the city, we expect that pressure on ISIL will continue to increase and their resistance will begin to wane. This is not a race, so patience is required. The protection of civilians continues to be a top priority for the ISF. It's going to take time and a lot of tough fighting, but we're confident of Daesh's defeat in Mosul. Daesh fighters are surrounded by a superior force, with little ability to resupply or reinforce their fighters. Since the beginning of the counterattack to liberate Mosul, starting on October the 17th, the coalition has relentlessly bombarded the enemy. The coalition has supported the Iraqi advance with more than 4,800 precision bombs, artillery shells, missiles and rockets against Daesh fighters and resources. The Iraqi security forces continue to fight bravely and display the dramatic progress they have made since 2014. It is truly amazing to watch them perform so professionally under pressure. Now, as the senior non-US officer in the coalition, I want to share some context about the contribution of non-US coalition members. As you know, we're a coalition of more than 60 nations, united against Daesh, and we're very proud that so many have offered contributions to fight against Daesh's twisted ideology here in Iraq, in Syria, and other locations around the world. In all, 29 nations contribute troops to Operation Inherent Resolve, with more than 3,800 in Iraq today, and they're contributing in key mission areas. Many nations have roles in training Iraqi army, police, border and tribal hold forces. All told, the coalition has trained more than 63,000 of these forces, and many of them are now engaged in combat operations in Mosul and other locations around Iraq. As you know, there has been a remarkable turnaround since Daesh rolled into Iraq in 2014, and the training of the ISF has been a key element in the campaign. It's been well over a year since Daesh last defeated an Iraqi force, although they continue to resist. And the training effort continues. There are more than 4,500 forces in training right now to sustain the Iraqi security forces and establish wide area security and hold forces when Mosul has been retaken. The overwhelming majority of the forces conducting this training are non-US coalition forces, and we believe their contributions play a key role in developing a sustainable security way ahead for Iraq, since the fall of Mosul and Raqqa will not in itself defeat Daesh. Once they have been defeated in Mosul and Raqqa, they will still be dangerous, and we will continue to support our partners in the region in further reducing them. With that, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, sir. We'll start with Tom Bowman from National Public Radio.
General, I wanted to ask you about Mosul. As you know, the civilians there have been...
All right, I'm seeing if I can re-cue that to see if he was going to discuss the water issue. As you know, if you listen to my show...
I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, sir. We'll start with Tom Bowman from National Public Radio.
General, I wanted to ask you about Mosul. As you know, the civilians there have been asked to remain in place, but some are saying now, with the fighting intensifying, it might be wise to have civilians, if possible, leave Mosul. Is that something that makes sense and you're considering? And also on Raqqa, the isolation phase, we're hearing here that there's expected to be a...
All right, I don't have the answer, so we'll work on that for another time. All right. I've got some other... You just had basically an information dump about Raqqa and Mosul. Now, I've got a little bit more. I mean, okay. The reason I really wanted to play that whole statement, let me get this out first, is that I wanted you to realize, because many of you hear me play the statements all the time, and it's usually a U.S. military officer I'm playing. I am usually not playing a briefing from a foreign officer. However, Major General Jones presented via teleconference, as they always do, through our own Department of Defense. And on that note, I felt it was important for you to be reminded of the fact that it's not just U.S. military. Yes, it's who I cover the most, and there's no way to deny that, because most of my listeners are here in the U.S. I'm going to be blunt on that one. Do I enjoy when I find that I've got listeners elsewhere around the world? You betcha. Would I love it absolutely love it if you would hit me up on social media, Jessie's POV on Twitter. Love it. Who knows? I may call you out on air. You never know what I'll do. So, okay. Moving on. Coalition, and for those of you who are listening, SDF, Security, Syrian Defense Force. All right? Syrian Defense Force, i.e., Free Syrian Army, i.e., people we have trained, or our coalition partners have trained. Just in case you weren't up on that one. And I am saddened to report that unfortunately, at least 500,000 people in the city of Mosul are still without water. One of 3 major pipelines was struck as Iraqi troops fought back Daesh militants in parts of eastern Mosul. The damaged conduit remains inside the group's territory, making it inaccessible for repairs. An Iraqi-led offensive, of course, began in October, blah, 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 blah. Everyone admits the pipeline break has occurred, but said Daesh's more sinister agenda has escalated the problem. The group has intentionally cut off water supplies to neighborhoods near the front line. In other words, they are trying to weaken people. All right. Where's the beginning of this article? Sorry, I have an article here and it got mangled when I printed it out. For civilians trapped behind enemy lines, the development of a chokehold of cutting off all supplies to militants effectively places a siege on the city and leaves them at the mercy of Daesh for the most basic necessities. Hundreds of thousands of civilians are living in a tragic situation due to the lack of access to food, water, electricity, and healthcare. All right. We're not the ones that cut off the water. There was one pipeline broken during combat. No offense, folks. Combat and war is rough. Stuff happens. So, things happen. And we can't always protect everything and everybody. We do our best, as do many other forces. All right. There is a positive note. Okay, I do have actually something positive. And this isn't necessarily directly in fact, it's not in Mosul. Daesh drove them from school, and now the kids of Mosul want to go back. The Hassan Sham camp, a sprawling refuge for displaced people east of Mosul, is growing by the day as people flee fighting in the city. Among the tents, toilets, food distribution centers, aid workers have set up classrooms and tents. There's a play space where little girls are jumping rope in the chilly sunshine, while hundreds more children sit in class. They're learning English, Arabic, arithmetic, most for the first time in years. About 1 million people have been living under Daesh in the Iraq city of Mosul for more than 2 years. Hundreds of thousands of them are children. The little boy who's about 10 used to like going to school, but he'd stopped going since Daesh came. Because they changed the curriculum. They showed us how to make a grenade, how to load a machine gun. They also incorporated bullets and bombs into math puzzles and showed children how to commit acts of violence. He went home and told his parents about the lessons he was getting in school. My mom said, "Stop going." But his mother says removing him from school didn't protect him from exposure to Daesh. They would tell children, "Come and watch our heroic acts," she said. They would slaughter people in public. The children were terrified. They should be playing. Instead, it was blood everywhere. Many people now coming out of Mosul speak of Daesh deliberately indoctrinating children at school, at summer camps, even at public executions, which they would encourage children to participate in. Iraqi teachers working with the displaced children say their ordeal is reflected in their behavior. One of the teachers stepped out of a math class to talk. "They're rough," she said. "They're violent," she explained, "especially the older ones." She's experienced and knows that Iraqi children saw violence even before Daesh, but said these children are faring worse than those who are not exposed to Daesh. They can change when they go to school and learn. They learn about tolerance, interact with other kids. They can still change. International aid agencies say setting up basic classrooms should be part of emergency help for children caught up in conflict. Even if it is a tented school, knowing that every day they can go there, that it's a safe space where they can meet other children. They can go back to learning practices. And that's it. That's from Isabella Castro-Giovanni, a UN Regional Child Protection Specialist. Castro-Giovanni has seen the benefit around the world of providing regular school access to children in conflict regions. In Afghanistan, after the fall of the oppressive Taliban regime, she recalled lines of girls waiting to go back to school for the first time in years. And one little boy in the camp said it was the happiest thing he's been since leaving Mosul. He was the happiest when he was back at school. So, while there are many horrors, we may not have lost an entire generation. I don't want to think we did. I pray we didn't. My, oh my, where does the time go? We are almost at the bottom of the hour. We are almost there. I can't believe it. I am grateful to know that the next phase in Raqqa, in Syria, the Syrian Democratic Forces, Syrian Democratic Forces, not Syrian Defense Force, Syrian Democratic Forces have recaptured 270 square miles of territory from Daesh. And they're less than 18 miles from Raqqa. Now, 18 miles is a huge distance. However, that's much better than where they were. All right, we are going to take a commercial break. And we will talk something besides Raqqa, Mosul, Inherent Resolve, and Daesh on the other side.
The following message contains a special offer for listeners of this station. Are you a man over 40? Are you constantly looking for the nearest bathroom? Do you wake up multiple times a night to use the bathroom? Right now, Perfect Prostate is sending out free bottles of their groundbreaking new formula to listeners of this station. Perfect Prostate Formula was developed by medical doctor Mitchell Fleischer, and its ingredients have been clinically studied to reduce your frequent nighttime bathroom visits and promote healthy urine flow. Right now, preferred customers get their first bottle of Perfect Prostate absolutely free. There's nothing to lose. Perfect Prostate is guaranteed to reduce that constant urge to use the bathroom, especially at night, and promote healthy urine flow. Don't wait. Call now for your free bottle. Just pay shipping and processing. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251. Supplies are limited. One free bottle per household. Call now. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you and your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
You can lay down if you wanna. You can run away if you wanna. You can pretend that this is totally okay if you wanna. You can play dead if you wanna. Forget what they said if you wanna. Turn your back on the country needing you right now, but I don't wanna.
All right, thank y'all for hanging in there with me while I paid them bills. We are still in the Middle East, folks. Yep, we are still in the Middle East. I am discussing the lovely country of Turkey. Now, I got this particular article off a Turkish news website. It was in English, but I did get it off a Turkish news website. The Turkish military launched its operations in Syria to end the rule of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, according to President Erdogan on November 29th. Quoting President Erdogan, "Nearly 1 million people have died in Syria. These deaths are still continuing without exception for children, women, and men. Where is the United Nations? What is it doing? Is it in Iraq? No. We preached patience but could not endure. In the end, we had to enter Syria together with the Free Syrian Army," Erdogan said at the first Interparliamentary Jerusalem Platform Symposium in Istanbul. Why did we enter? We do not have an eye on Syrian soil. The issue is to provide lands to their real owners. That is to say, we are there for the establishment of justice. We entered there to end the rule of the tyrant al-Assad, who terrorizes the state with state terror. On August 24th, the Turkish armed forces launched an operation in Syria, the Euphrates Shield, with FSA, Free Syrian Army, fighters to clear the country's southern border of both Daesh and Syrian Kurdish Democratic Union Party forces, aka the Kurds, PYD, to be specific, which Ankara considers a terrorist group linked to the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK. Last week, a total of six Turkish troops, 4 of them suspected in a suspected Syrian government, were killed. 4 of them in a suspected Syrian government attack and 2 in Daesh attacks. This was 3 separate attacks from November 24th to the 26th. Turkish jets claim they have killed at least 11 Daesh militants. The United Nations humanitarian chief and relief coordinator Stephen O'Brien said on November 29th that up to 16,000 people had been displaced in Aleppo by intense attacks on the rebel-held western part of the city. The area had no functioning hospitals left, food stockpiles were nearly exhausted, and it was likely that thousands more people would flee their homes if fighting persisted in the coming days. The situation is very bad. There's intense fear of collective annihilation, said a medic who lives in the area. He added, "This week I've changed locations 3 times. In the shelter, we had dead people we couldn't take out because the bombardment was so intense." Russia, on the other hand, said on November 29th that the Syrian army's breakthrough in Aleppo had dramatically altered the situation on the ground, allowing more than 80,000 civilians access to humanitarian aid after years of being used by militants as human shields. So, I'm going to say both sides are spewing propaganda. Now, if Turkey did declare an official war on Syria, which I haven't seen any of the mainstream networks pick this up, but if they did, it could draw in NATO, because Turkey is a member of NATO. However, I think to activate an attack on one is an attack on all. Turkey itself must be attacked. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to read the section of NATO rather in-depthly. I've got one more Turkey story. Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yildirim and opposition Nationalist Party Movement Party leader David Balasi are expected to meet on December 1st to discuss the new constitution that is being drafted with contributions from the latter. Ruling and Just Development Party deputy head and spokesperson Yasin Atay said on November 30th that a document had been agreed upon and might be announced at the end of the meeting to be held at the Kankaya mansion. It is a revision that is concentrated totally on the governance system. It will still be called the presidential system. It will still continue as a presidential system, but technically it will have a draft. It will be a draft that will have necessary changes. All right. I don't know what the Turkish constitution says right now, but after the coup attempt and Erdogan purging and imprisoning and ousting hundreds of thousands, this is scary. After one last meeting with Bahalsi, we will introduce the draft to the Parliament. We will introduce the constitutional amendment to the Parliament Speaker's office as a proposal of the ruling Justice and Development Party. If the MHP, the Nationalist Movement Party, would like, we can submit it together. This is going to be interesting. Now, Erdogan and AKP the AKP argue. Turkey needs a strong leadership and an executive. Erdogan and AKP said Turkey needs a strong leadership, a system akin to the United States or France, to avoid fragile coalition governments that have allegedly hampered development in the past. This is going to be interesting to see what they come up with. I will be following up on this one. One of our other favorite topics, North Korea. No, they didn't have another launch. But the UN toughens sanctions. Security Council strengthens measures against DPRK's nuclear ballistic missile activities, strongly condemning the nuclear test conducted by the Democratic People's Republic of China on 9 September. The Security Council today unanimously, which means including China, adopted measures that the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon described as the toughest and most comprehensive sanctions regimen ever against that country. Through a unanimously adopted resolution, the 15-member council reaffirmed that the DPRK should not conduct any further nuclear tests, launches using ballistic missile technology, or any other provocation. The sanctions target revenue sources for the Northeast Asian country nuclear or ballistic missile programs, with the Council for the first time imposing a limit on how much coal the DPRK, aka North Korea, can export per year. According to the resolution, total exports of coal from North Korea to all member states should not exceed $4 million or $4 million or 7.5 million metric tons annually, whichever is lower. And this begins in January 1st, 2017. For the remainder of this year, the ceiling is $53.4 million or $1 or 1 million metric tons. Further to the text, each member state that procures coal from North Korea must report the aggregate amount of the volume of such procurement monthly. When 95% of the aggregate yearly amount has been reached, member states will be notified they must immediately cease procuring coal from North Korea for the year. That's pretty tough. Coal is their biggest export. And I do have a soundbite on that. It's not a long one, I promise.
Today's resolution includes the toughest and most comprehensive sanctions regime ever imposed by the Security Council. It sends an unequivocal message that the DPRK must cease further provocative actions and comply fully with its international obligations.
The door remains open for the DPRK to choose a different path, to choose the path of negotiations toward complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. When the DPRK makes this choice, the United States, and I know this council, will be ready to engage.
Now, you notice I played General Ban Ki-moon in the United States. There was a statement from a Chinese representative, however, it was not translated into English. And I don't speak Mandarin, so I was unable to bring that to you. Alright. Still staying on the Korean Peninsula. South Korea and Japan set aside historic animosities to jointly cope with North Korea threat. South Korea and Japan formally signed the first ever military intelligence pact aimed at allowing the neighboring countries to better cope with evolving North Korean missile and nuclear threats, despite historic animosities that have thwarted past attempts to forge closer ties. The two countries signed the General Security of Military Information Agreement in Seoul to share critical information on the North that can allow policymakers to grasp developments taking place in the reclusive regime. The signing comes less than a month after discussions resumed following a hiatus of 4 years. 4 years. This agreement will promote greater collaboration and enhance readiness of the combined Republic of Korea and U.S. forces to respond to the unacceptable threat posed by North Korea, said General Vincent K. Brooks, Combined Forces Command, U.S. Forces Commander, posted on the U.S. Force Command website. In contrast, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said the two countries are locked in a Cold War mindset by strengthening military cooperation, which in turn could worsen confrontation on the Korean Peninsula and introduce new unstable factors in the Northeast region. Most recently, China was infuriated by Seoul's decision to deploy an advanced U.S. anti-missile system known as THAAD in South Korea by 2017 to defend against incoming missiles from the north. China claimed the system's powerful X-band radar can spy on its military and undermine its national interest. Despite China's objection, the pact from a strategic standpoint appears to be widely accepted as a necessary step by the South to bolster its defense capabilities against escalating missile threats from its belligerent rivals in the north. Pyongyang has launched some 20 missiles this year alone and has the goal of developing a nuclear-tipped, long-range missile that could hit parts of the U.S. mainland. I'm going to repeat that. Pyongyang has launched some 20 missiles this year alone and has the goal of developing a nuclear-tipped long-range missile that could hit parts of the U.S. mainland. Security experts said the pact will enable effective and real-time military cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo in case of a conflict on the peninsula. South Koreans have traditionally been uneasy about any military partnership with Japan, as they think Japan has not sincerely apologized for atrocities it committed in the past. South Korea was a colony of Japan from 1910 through 1945. Okay, so South Korea has a long memory. Can't say I blame them. But I do think this is a good step forward. One more story on South Korea. The presidential office on Thursday urged Parliament to promptly carry out cross-party negotiations to decide when and how President Park Geun-hye will resign over a high-profile corruption scandal involving herself and her longtime friend. Earlier this week, the embattled leader pledged to bow out in accordance with the timetable and procedures which she asked the National Assembly to set up in a way that minimizes any vacuum in state affairs. Despite Park's call for the legislature to determine her fate, opposition parties have dug in their heels, vowing to close ranks and push for Park's impeachment. Yet some lawmakers of the ruling Sonori party who were initially in favor of impeachment are now leaning towards Park's early resignation to pave the way for a stable government transition. In the morning, Representative Kim Mong-sung, a former Sonori head and prominent rival of Park within the party, held talks with Cho Mi-ao, the leader of the main opposition Democratic Party, to try and close the gap between the two sides, but they failed to agree. As Kim expressed his intention to time Park's resignation for the end of April next year, while Chow said Park must step down by the end of January. That's a pretty big difference, folks. Alright, we covered the whole scandal yesterday. Checking the time here. Fidel Castro's funeral. Oh yes, I even have a story from this side of the world. Good old Fidel. He passed away and gave me a nice story for you guys. I refuse to celebrate anyone's death, however, he was a brutal dictator, and I know many are not sad to see him go. President Obama will not send a formal delegation to Cuba to attend the funeral of the former Cuban strongman Fidel Castro, but will instead dispatch a top White House aide. Benjamin Rhodes, a deputy national security advisor, will attend the funeral, as will Jeffrey de Laurentiis, the top American diplomat in Cuba. The administration decided that the relationship between the two countries remained quite complicated, said Josh Sternis. There are many aspects of the U.S.-Cuba relationship that were characterized by a lot of conflict and turmoil, not just during the Castro regime. Mr. Ernest said the administration continued to have significant concerns about the Cuban government, including its poor protection of basic human rights. So I believe this was an appropriate way for the United States to show our commitment to an ongoing, future-oriented relationship with the Cuban people. Okay. No, I don't cover U.S. politics, but President-elect Donald Trump warned Monday that the push to build ties with Cuba after decades of animosity could be quickly wiped away despite growing business and commercial ties between the two countries. There's your U.S. politics from me, folks. Got a little bit more on the Castro funeral. Fidel's Castro funeral will bring together an unlikely mix of world leaders, royalty, Marxist guerrillas, and Hollywood actors. Wait a minute. Yes, you heard me. World leaders, royalty, Marxist guerrillas, and Hollywood actors. The official guest list goes on for 20 pages. With a varied group of VIPs such as former Spanish King Juan Carlos, a vice president of the North Korean Workers' Party, and left-leaning actor Danny Glover. Castro's wife and children, whose existence for years was a state secret, could make a rare appearance. Castro's long-estranged sister, Juanita Castro, said she would not be leaving exile in Miami to attend the funeral. Nearly every Latin American head of state will be on hand. The arrival of left-leaning presidents of Bolivia, Ecuador, Nicaragua, and Venezuela is no surprise, and in fact speaks how much the world has changed since Castro took power in 1959. Shortly after the Cuban revolt, every country in the Western Hemisphere except Mexico broke relations with Cuba, alarmed at Castro's growing alliance with what was then the Soviet Union. But thanks to a recent boom in leftist governments, some Castro helped to install, like Nicaragua's Daniel Ortega, the region is now chock full of Cuba allies. Many observers will be watching for the interaction between Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and Raul Castro, since late Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez began to copy Cuba's socialist and fiercely anti-U.S. government style. Cuba and Venezuela have all but melded into one country. But with oil prices plummeting, Venezuela has been forced to cut precious oil subsidies to Cuba, leading many to wonder if the Venezuela-Cuba love affair is on the rocks. Like I said, here's a couple more things. Jerry Adams, former leader of Sinn Féin, the political wing of the IRA, stood in line, the massive line of people in Havana's Revolutionary Square. He is quoted as saying he's here because Fidel was a good friend to Ireland. Castro was also a good friend to revolutionaries across Africa. Zimbabwe's ailing President Robert Mugabe arrived to attend the memorial to Castro. Fidel wasn't just your leader. Fidel was the leader of all revolutionaries, Mugabe told Cuban state TV upon arriving at Havana's Jose Marti airport. But leaders of the United States and Russia, the two countries that most define Cuba's international relations, will be conspicuously absent, despite having made history by restoring diplomatic relations with Cuba and carrying out the first U.S. visit to Cuba since the revolution by a U.S. President, Barack Obama. We'll skip Castro's funeral. And the U.S. Embassy, and I'm proud of this last sentence here, the U.S. Embassy in Havana is one of the few diplomatic missions in the Cuban capital that has not lowered its flag to half-staff to mark Castro's death. The U.S. Embassy in Havana is one of the few diplomatic missions in the Cuban capital that has not lowered its flag to half-staff. I'm proud of that one. Alright, I am faced with 4 stories in 4 minutes. There's one I really want to touch on, so we're going to skim through this one. Germany arrested an informant for the government's intelligence services after he was caught making radical Islamist statements and offering to give away top-secret information on the internet. The state prosecutor's office in Dusseldorf said the 51-year-old suspect, a bank employee of Spanish origin, living in Germany, had joined the country's domestic intelligence service in April to observe militant Islam seen as an informant, but was arrested late Tuesday accused of offering to share classified information under an alias in an internet chat room. And the case quickly revived fears of jihadist attacks in Germany, a country already on tenterhooks over the worry that terrorists could be hiding among the more than 1 million refugees from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan who have arrived in the last year. The suspect faces charges of espionage and preparing to an act of violence against the state. Alright, I tripped over this story while I was doing show prep. It's not really a hard news story, but I gotta do this one. Journalists have long been targets of harassment and even death threats in Turkey, yet one Turkish news organization is persisting despite tenacious setbacks. The website has been blocked 4 times for quote-unquote supporting terrorism. One reporter served 3 months in jail for covering up a political demonstration. But the agency's aim goes one step beyond media freedom. It wants to give women a larger voice in the region by emphasizing and prioritizing their stories. The JIN news agency, JINHA, is completely staffed by women, offering news coverage of Turkey, Iraq, and Syria in multiple languages. Jin means woman in Kurdish. It is a strong mandate in the region known for its gender inequality that is also staggering under the weight of conflict. Alright, I had to do that one. And if you can't figure out why, listen to my show. Don't forget, you can catch me on Twitter at Jessie's POV. You can catch me on Facebook at Jessie's POV. Or you can shoot me an email right here at the station, Jessie's POV at KLRNRadio.com. And on that note, folks, I'm out